Hello again, this is Dan, and this may turn into a thing. Seems like I've decided that it's easier to just record a short video than to post, to make lengthy posts to forums and whatnot. So this is an explainer for the help action, because it comes up a lot in any of the different forums. And it is a simple idea that then leads to some very complex implementations. So doesn't surprise me that as people get into D&D deeper, they need to spend more time understanding help. All right, so I'm going to break this up into a couple of parts. The first part is just what you need to know, the basics. It's like, what do you need to know as a player? How are you going to use help? Then as a DM, and then finally as an author or designer or whatever. All right. So the idea is this: someone is trying to do something, and you're going to give up your another PC gives up their actions to help them, to increase their chances of success. And there are two relevant passages in the DMG. One is in the Player's Handbook. One is on page 175 under Working Together, and one is in the Actions under Combat, where it lists the help action. Right. So the first thing is when can you help someone else, right? And that is when someone is trying an ability check or a task, but we're generally talking about ability checks that you yourself could accomplish. Right? That's the first requirement. It's got to be something that you yourself could accomplish. So the example listed, there are a couple of examples in the Player's Handbook of when you cannot use it. And one is like, well, if there is a lock that is so sophisticated that only someone who is proficient in thieves' tools can unlock it, and if you're not proficient in thieves' tools, then you can't help someone else's. Or there are some tasks that no matter that are just generally lend themselves only to a single person's success or failure, and the example they use is threading the eye of needle. Although in actual play, that second category where I see it come up most is in knowledge checks, right? It's just like, well, does anyone, there's a piece of history or a piece of arcana or a piece of religious information. It's like, how can you help someone reach? So there are two different perspectives on that. One is that you can't, right? Someone either remembers that or they don't. And that's very widely used, supported by the rules, is a perfectly valid implementation. Another one is well, no, right? Like we've all had the experience of, what's the name of that actor in that movie? The tall guy, and people start helping us with that, right? They're like, oh, the one with the brother, Jeff Bridges, or the one who doesn't have the brother, right? And so, so that there are instances that we can point to in the real world where people are attempting to recall knowledge, and those around them do provide them aid. And so I've seen implementations where the DM will allow help with knowledge checks. The other thing that comes up a lot. So, for example, this is one with me personally. This one comes up a lot. I use a lot of creatures that have poison. So, if you defeat a creature that has poison, a wyvern or a poisonous snake, whatever, it's a DC 20 nature check to extract a vial of poison from their carcass. And occasionally there will be someone who has an intelligence of 8 who's like, well, I want to help. And it's like, well, you can't help because you could not make a DC 20 on your own, right? So you can't help someone because you could not make that ability check on your own. Another thing that comes up from time to time is because 175 specifically mentions thieves' tools, people want to say that just as a blanket rule, that you can't help someone with a task that involves tools. So you can't help someone use their leatherworking tools to repair armor. That is not what 175 says. It just gives an example, but it doesn't say that you can never help someone with it. It just gives the specific example of a lock that requires thieves' tools, proficiency in thieves' tools. Not all locks do require proficiency in thieves' tools, and certainly if you can't help someone unless you're proficient in that, then 8-year-old girls are doing something radically wrong because they are clearly not proficient in kitchen tools, and they are helping their mothers bake cookies virtually every weekend, right? 8-year-old boys are clearly not proficient with mechanics tools, and they are helping their fathers repair their cars every weekend. So it can be a tool check, and it is perfectly valid to allow someone to help with a tool check, despite the mention of thieves' tools on 175. All right, so then we get into the help action in combat. When when 5th edition was very new, the group of us who went to Gen Con the first year, and we all had owl familiars because, and we were using them to aid our first attack in combat, and it caused a great deal of consternation. Now it's no ruffle at all, right? So people have caught on to the idea of help, but there are still nuances that that people have failed to realize. So the first thing is, you don't have to remain within 5 feet in combat. You don't have to remain within 5 feet of the target. You can use the help action and then move away. This for a long time, and there may be still DMs who decide this, but you don't. Right? When you use the help action, you are basically imposing a condition that will persist until the beginning of your next turn, right? And so that's the one thing. You don't have to stay next to the person. It does require an action to do it. And there are a couple of things about that. So first of all, you have to help a specific creature, and you have to be granting the advantage to a specific ally. Right? So you can't say, I'm just going to distract this opponent, and then any of your allies who happens to attack that guy next gets advantage. No, you're saying, no, I am distracting him so that Toric can have advantage on his attack. Right? And it's got to be Toric. It can't be Baldo or whatever ally. It's got to be Toric. Right? Because I see that a lot. It's just, well, I'm just going to distract him, and then whoever attacks him next. That's not the way to help it. It's got to be a specific enemy and a specific ally. The other thing is that I see underutilized is it doesn't have to be an attack roll, right? So once you've used the help action and distracted the opponent, your ally can use an ability check. So why would you do that? Well, what if your ally has Shield Master, right? So now he can shove him prone and have advantage on his athletics check, and consequently then have advantage on all of his attacks instead of just the first attack. Right? Or maybe your opponent is grappled, right? And by an octopus or whatever, and you want to help them escape, so you grant them advantage on their athletics check or acrobatics check to escape the grapple. Right? So there are. And I see that a lot of times as an observer in a DM, and I try not to interpose because I think a big part of the game is learning on your own and discovering those things. Usually I will take those, kind of make mental notes of that and convey them after the session, unless I think that the party's in danger of failure, and then I may make suggestions. All right, so that's going to be 90% of help that's going to be the information that will cover 90% at least of the situations that most players are going to be engaged in help with, right? The owls flyby help, when and the fringe cases when you're going to be helping someone or not. When you include those, we're well over 90. Right. So as a DM who wants to design his own modules, let's say he's like, I want to build my own encounters. All right. Where does help come into that? All right. So help is a very powerful mechanism. Right? And by that, what I mean is let's say you have a group of 12th level adventurers, and you could have a set of CR4 creatures, right, with them, or you could have a set of CR3 creatures and a set of CR0 creatures. Right. So what's the big deal about help then? Well, when you go into modifying a monster CR, right, there is a principle involved there that if it is something that does not affect the creature, it does not affect the creature's CR. So for example, the leadership trait, right, which the knight has, and the hobgoblin warlord, and if you do the engineering, and it's actually listed in the trait section in modifying a monster. But if you do if you re-engineer the CR calculations, what you will find is that their leadership, which provides a D4 to attack rolls and saving throws for any ally who's within 30 feet of them, does not affect that knight or hobgoblin warlord's CR. However, if you look at creatures that can cast Bless, okay, like the priest NPC or the acolyte NPC, you will see that Bless, which gets a similar D4 to saving throws and attack rolls, it is in their calculated CR. And so you say, why is it? Well, it's because the Bless spell can also affect the creature that casts it, right? And which gives them an effective +2 to hit and an effective +2 on all saving throws. Right? Whereas the leadership trait, the knight does not affect himself with leadership. He's only affecting those around him. You see that there are several traits that are like that, right? So what does that have to do with help action? So if you wanted to make a tougher encounter with the same XP budget, instead of taking that set of CR4 creatures for your 12th level PCs, you could take a slightly less strong CR3 creatures, right? And then add in some commoners and give them the ability to use help as a bonus action, right? Because help does not affect them, it would not change the comp, so they would still be CR0. But your CR3s then would then have advantage on their first attack or ability check against your PCs in all times. I've done this a few times, and I flavor it in different ways. It's usually the encounter is set up as with some sort of a demagogue type figure who has a following who are stupid and insignificant, but they are able to help him to gain advantage on his attacks and ability checks. And again, you have to be careful as to what they're going to be using the help action for. So, for example, initiative is an ability check, but there's no way to help someone with ability checks. I mean, with initiative rolls, right? Like, how do I improve your initiative by helping you with initiative? I guess you could flavor that some way, but generally that's not good. And also, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you are careful in it, because advantage on attack roll is a pretty heavy hit when designing an encounter. But I have done it in Dimgaard modules, right? If you look, not a lot, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times out of the 120-ish modules that are floating or that I've done in Dimgaard for 5th edition. So I have done it, and it is a valid thing to do. So I think that's a pretty comprehensive study of the help action. You can, if you have something you want to add, there's the comment section at the bottom of this. I would be very interested if there's something I've left out, that that would be great if someone would contribute. Thanks.